One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. Welcome to 2023.
Absolutely. I'm Dave, by the way.
And I'm Marla, and
there
welcome to my amazing graphic tee.
Well, that tee looks so cute on you.
See, thank you.
Who recommended you get that and that you wear it?
I think it was Drew, Alexis Thomas,
wow.
/ Russell.
I think that might be just the opposite.
Nonetheless, we're here. We're happy to be here in 2023, and we're super happy to have our first guest of the year. Looking forward to this
Absolutely.
conversation.
We want to remind you before we get to our guest to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. He's a mental health storyteller, an adult ADHD / post-trauma advocate, and an overall warrior when it comes to mental health advocacy. Our guest today is Mr. Joe Kou. Like most of us, he has a story to share in the hopes that his transparency will help and inspire someone else, someone like you. When we come back, we will hear Joe's story, Joe Kou, when we come back.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
All right, like we said, our guest today is Mr. Joe Kou. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
All right, so Tony, make sure you turn his mic up accordingly. Thank you so much. So, Joe, I guess when you were growing up, you were in a Asian American household, growing up with your mom and your sister.
Yes.
Was that a typical Asian American household, or how would you describe that? Tell us about it.
I love jumping in with that as the framing.
There you go.
That lets me talk about something very big, which is the model minority myth. I'm sure a lot of people know about that. It's a myth about Asian Americans, right? It's the tiger mom, and you have to have straight A's, or you're disgrace to your grandfather and your ancestors, and all of this. I was none of those things.
Wow, that's just a stereotype that plays out on a TV show. That's
something that's been fed to us, and we've been convinced to believe.
Right, and not only that, Asian Americans have been convinced to believe and model after, and that in itself, and this kind of will lead into a bigger conversation, I think, today. But that
little feedback loop there.
There was always a disconnect because I wasn't Asian, because I wasn't those things.
Right.
But anybody on the street looking at me would be like, "Well, you're not white."
Yeah.
Right.
Can you do my math homework?
Yeah, right.
Even further marginalized.
And I'll tell you, I failed high school math.
Wow.
I failed math.
Wow.
So all right.
So describe how you grew up.
So I grew up as an abused child. Let's put it that way. There was a lot of abuse going on at home, right? And my mother was a single mother. She did her best. She had her own issues that were never supported and treated or dealt with. Right, exactly. So oftentimes the children become kind of the punching bag for a lot of those unresolved issues.
Those that are closest, they get the whirlwind.
Exactly. So that was my life until I got to a point where I ran away from home. I was around 20, mid-20s. actually.
Were you in college at the time, or?
I dropped out of college.
Okay.
Yeah, in and out of college, dropped out of school, couldn't function. I didn't know until I was in my late 30s that I had undiagnosed ADHD, and I was living with CPTSD for about 3 decades.
Now
you have to remind everybody.
Everyone's
yes.
aware of PTSD, post-traumatic
Yes.
stress disorder. What is CPTSD?
So CPTSD is complex
Yeah.
post-traumatic stress.
Yes.
So we all know about PTSD,
Yes.
right? We know it's something that happened to you, a singular or a big series of events that you can't quite heal completely from, and
Right.
it lingers in you.
Not
So that's,
not actually just about, but sometimes marginalized to our servicemen and women that serve in the armed forces.
Precisely,
Yeah.
precisely. That's where we tend to see a lot of the awareness around, which is good. They
Which is
need
good
that
for them,
awareness,
yes.
but that's not the only picture.
There are
That's a great
other
point.
of us that have to deal with it as well that don't
Exactly.
actually come from that perspective.
Exactly. So when it comes to CPTSD, it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So instead of one big event or one big series
Multiple.
of events, you're talking about consistent trauma and stress. It might be on a very low level,
But it's just always there.
but it's constantly there, and there's no sign or indication that it's ever going to stop. And over time, if you live with that, you begin to internalize and normalize that. And that wreaks havoc on your complete being. It also leads to physical and mental deterioration. It's huge. It's a big problem, right? But I was living and coping with that unknowingly
Wow.
until my late 30s.
And
So
So,
what
okay.
actually brought you to that awareness? I
was
know
just gonna-
Marla's about to ask you that.
No, yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna say that there's so much conversation right now about, and so much more we understand about suicide, which in anybody's eyes and views is tragic, because any death to me that is surrounding mental health is an unnecessary death.
Right.
It's not an accident. You don't walk out in the street and then shoot, that that it's
Right.
unfortunate. So when I think about that, and I just heard you say that, what came to my mind was, man, you created an escape, a physical escape
Right.
from the trauma. In other words, and in a lot of cases, which I consider you very blessed, it is that I'm suffering so much for so long without an end or without an understanding that people don't realize a lot of the times that is what literally drives suicide.
Yes.
The body's way, the mind of saying, I just can't live under this much tension and stress and forever. And so this is the only way I see out. It's not that you want to die, but you can't suffer like this forever.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big comorbidities that tends to follow CPTSD and undiagnosed mental health is, of course, suicidality. Also something I grappled with and wrestled with. But I want to speak to that point, which is when somebody is battling constantly with suicidality, it isn't typically that they actually want to kill themselves.
Right.
What they're
They just want the
wanting
pain to end.
it's
Stop
an
suffering.
End. They want an end.
Yeah.
And when there is no end in sight, there is a very cold kind of logic that can kick in, and that's the danger. We tend to say, this person that's suicidal, they're not right. No, they're very right.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a very cold logic, but it's a logic.
We always have Marla and I, and really Marla's the one who came up with it, but I use it as well now. I stole it from her. There go I, but for the grace of God. So you never know if you have to deal with the circumstances that someone else has had to deal with. You say, oh, how could they think of those things? But if
Exactly.
you were in those same shoes,
Right.
lived that same life, had that
Right.
same background, you'd be in the exact same place.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember.
So,
Yeah.
so in your mid-20s,
Yeah, I was saying there's a gap between you said
decided
that you left it in your 20s,
yes.
but then you found the answer in your 30s. That's
Right.
like a decade or so.
So, like many individuals, I think, that went undiagnosed and went into adulthood not knowing what happened to them,
Yeah.
I have a span of lost years where I was still I was surviving the impact of living with my trauma. I hadn't at that point unpacked any of it,
It's a
done
great
any
way of
healing
putting
work.
it.
I didn't have any words for it even. It was, I need to get out of this situation. And then for decades, it was just go to this job, go to that job, live here, live there. There was no stability in my life. But oddly, staying distracted, staying busy, constantly moving gave me the illusion that I was in some
making some
control
progress
of my
there.
life.
Yeah.
And I was getting physically away from things that I didn't know at the time, but were my trauma triggers. And so that became a kind of self-medicating that went on for decades until, again, I didn't know any of these words.
Yeah.
Right. All of these things.
You didn't have the framework.
You were experiencing without the knowledge and understanding.
Right.
It was just something you were living.
Exactly. Very reactionary.
Was there any type of substance escape for you? Because it is for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I was fortunate in that I was always a nerd. So my escape was always video games. But really, my trauma was such that I learned to derealize. And what that is you become dissociated. You train yourself. If you can't stop somebody from hurting you constantly, and you're always hypervigilant, eventually some people learn to just shut down and don't
shut
feel.
the emotional capacity out to that
feeling.
part of your life.
Stop feeling and disappear. And it's as if I kind of lift out of my body. Nothing's happening to me. And so I started to chase those experiences. So this is why I talk about video games. Video games is where I can see myself for 20 hours just disappear. I don't want to feel. Put me in a different reality. Let me be something else for 20 hours. That was my drug.
Well, so while you were going from place to place, you can consistently play these video games for those 10 years?
Well, I did my best. I did my best to play as many video games for as long as I could. But again, it was a self-medicating because when I was playing a video game, I could just hyper-focus.
Yeah.
And it was a comfort.
It was
to
a
me.
way to go from one moment to the next.
And you can
the next thing you know, a bunch of moments have gone by.
You can be something else that you can imagine yourself to be, other than anything but the reality that is actually your life.
Exactly, and there was a blessing in it, in that I didn't have to feel my body anymore.
Well, the good thing is that you can actually reflect back and say that, yes, I did see a blessing in that, where somebody else might have a completely different, more negative perspective. But you've told us about the abuse that you survived, the way that you just escaped by running away.
Yeah.
And you told us about how you found some more of a classical answer to some of these issues and some of that framework in your 30s.
Yes.
We'll actually talk about that transitional moment where you found these answers when we come right back. Our guest is Joe Kou, an amazing story, an amazing young man, and we can't wait to continue our conversation. We'll be right back.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Here are 5 mental health conditions that are routinely underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed. Number 1, depression. While being one of the most common mental health conditions, the World Health Organization states that up to 85% of people in middle and low-income countries do not get treatment for depression. Here in the U.S., estimates suggest that only about half of people with depression get the treatment that they need. Bipolar disorder. Many mental health experts have warned that bipolar disorder is underdiagnosed, but recent research suggests that bipolar disorder might in fact be overdiagnosed, while others simply argue it is frequently misdiagnosed. Go figure. Some bipolar disorder symptoms are similar to those of other illnesses, which can make it challenging for a healthcare provider to make an accurate diagnosis, according to the National Institute of Mental Health.
Also, PTSD. Experts have sometimes called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, the missed diagnosis, even though it is highly prevalent. One reason PTSD sometimes flies under the radar is because it's so strongly associated with people who serve in the military, but are by no means the only ones who do. Also, eating disorders. Stereotypes about who develops eating disorders could contribute to disparities in diagnosis and treatment, with males, those of higher weight, people of color, and the non-affluent most likely to be slipping through the cracks, according to researchers with the University of Michigan School of Public Health.
The last and the fifth one is borderline personality disorder. BPD is one of the most commonly misdiagnosed mental health conditions according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. It's so misdiagnosed, in fact, there isn't even an accurate prevalence rate for the actual condition. One reason for that is the symptoms of BPD often look like something else.
Many people still have negative perceptions of mental health conditions and disorders, which affects the number who seek treatment. Those struggling either don't want to believe that they have an issue or do not want others to know that they do. We here at Mental Health Monday want you to know that if you need help, it's okay. You're not alone. This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically live my personality on my scene.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
As we get back into our conversation with Joe Kou, I want to thank you and welcome everybody who's in the chat room, and just know that I am following, and so if you have questions that you'd like to be answered in real time, I'll do my best to get to them as our guest continues to share his story. So, go ahead.
So, Joe, we're now in your 30s, where you said that you had some of these breakthroughs, and you found some of the framework, even the language with which to communicate some of the things that you were dealing with. Tell us about how that came about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that a lot of people in the helping professions tend to come from backgrounds of pain and trauma themselves, and I was no exception to that. I started a life coaching business because I realized that the things that I was going through in my life were meaningful if I was willing to learn from them and understand them. So it started off with me realizing, man, like all of this stuff that I've been through, this is not normal. Now, is there just something wrong with me, or is it simply that there's something here I'm not seeing? And I decided that it was the second. I didn't know it was the second. I decided it was. It had to be.
And repeat the second?
And so I decided it is. I don't care if it is, but I'm deciding it is because there's something I'm not seeing
Your
here.
mental perspective was a result of something that was done to you.
Right. Otherwise, it was just pain for no reason, and I cannot stand
It didn't have a purpose.
And as a storyteller, you never let pain go to waste. And I love stories. Right?
Wow.
So I looked at my life from that lens and started to realize there must be things here for me that are of value, even though it's coming from so much pain and mistakes. And I failed in every way an Asian person can fail.
Wow.
As an Asian person.
Wow.
Right?
That stereotype, yeah.
Right. So that started me on a path of reading every book I can get my hands on. And I started watching TED Talks. I was building a coaching career because I started talking to other people, and they were like, wow, Joe, I can learn so much from you.
Yeah, it was helpful. Your testimony was helpful.
Right. So out of all of that, the more I learned about what happened to me, the better I got at listening to stories from other people. And the more I listened to other people's stories, the more I realized, oh, crap, this isn't just me.
Right.
Yeah. You're not alone.
So I'm going to shift a little bit because I have a personal question, because I, too, relate to where you're coming from with just your shared experience.
Yes.
How much of your mission and your purpose born out of pain do you withhold to protect the people around you that also share your story, your mother, your sister?
Tons, all the time.
Yeah.
Every day.
So that's the I wanted to personally hear what that line is for you, because that's a hard thing for me. I grapple with that at all times because I'm so connected in the truth and in the pain to my family, but yet and still I know this is my assignment to share.
Yeah.
And I would say, before you even answered that, Joe, in some sort of nuanced way, is that where your gift of storytelling helps you navigate sort of that complex pathway to make sure that you can protect others, but at the same time you're not overburdened with keeping this sort of under wraps, and it's eventually bubbling up to the surface.
Yeah, and that's something you see a lot in coaches and people in the helping profession. It's this struggle with authenticity, right? It's the idea that how can I say and preach authenticity when I'm not 100%? with
your
some
own
people,
right, exactly.
with people that are closest to me.
Right.
Well, the thing that I realized about that is I chose to dive into my pain. I chose to frame it so that I can understand what happened, and I chose to not judge what I saw no matter what. The other people in my life have not done that. And so I don't hold it against them, but I also don't invite them to the same authenticity.
Got it.
Right? To that I've chosen.
Right.
So I have a different kind of question, and I hope this comes out the correct way. But the way that you're describing it, it's as if there was mental health issues and trauma that you dealt with sort of in your own way.
Yes.
Without the help of a psychologist,
Traditional
a therapist,
Right.
or a psychiatrist. Right. And first of all, hats off to you. But would you recommend others handle their trauma in the same way?
Don't do what I do. What I'm here to say is there is remarkable resiliency within the human being that is willing to embrace pain and face it. That's what I did. That was my hard pill to swallow. But you can do that with help. I did it without the help.
Yeah.
I suggest not doing what I did because it took me years of doing that. And there was no guarantee that I was going to see the other side without getting help. I took a huge gamble. And I'm here today to say, look, don't do it that way. You don't have to.
Yours is a longer, painful road around.
And it's very uncertain. I am a particular kind of gritty. I am fiercely independent. I'm fiercely just, when I set my mind to something, I am dangerous because nothing is going to stop me.
See? Asian stereotype. Right. I knew it was in there somewhere.
It's in there. It's in the blood.
I knew it.
It's in there. It's in
Can
us.
we just say,
this is Marla. I'm Joe's tiger host.
The tiger.
You're the tiger mother I've been needing. Thank you.
Wow.
I'm the tiger host.
So Joe, talk to us about your storytelling. How does that actually factor into all of this healing experience when it comes to how you talk about your past and its helpfulness for those that you tell these stories to?
So earlier on, I started a project called 300 Conversations. And the only rule was I'm going to push myself to talk to 300 people for at least 2 hours.
2 hours?
And I'm going to do it within a year.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't make it to 300, but I set a goal so high and I pushed so hard that I ended up talking to more than 260 people.
Wow,
That's
for 2
pretty
hours
impressive.
each.
And 2 hours each. And I didn't charge anything.
That's 520 hours of conversation.
Yes.
Minimum.
And short of 300 would have been short, 65 days short of a year.
Right.
At one every year, 2 hours hours a day.
And then there were days where I was doing nothing but conversations, just back to back.
Okay, stop.
Yep.
What does that help me? Share. Just give me an example. What's the what did that conversation? How do you start that conversation, and how do you choose who you speak to, and what does that sound like?
So I did all of this over my Facebook and social media, and I reached out to people I knew, but I also kind of had a presence. I was building a coaching business at the time, and so it was very organic. And some people I ended up talking to multiple times. I still counted those.
Yes.
Right. But
because it was a different conversation.
Right. And the framing of the conversation goes something like this. Look, there's no rules. I am a coach. Full transparency. I will not sell you anything. You will not be enrolled to anything. What I ask of you is be human with me for 2 hours. And what I found was there were conversations where a person just asked, Joe, can we just be silent together for an hour?
Wow.
Can you just be here with me for an hour? And there were conversations where somebody connected from a homeless shelter just to talk, just to have somebody.
That's pretty. What's
happening here is I'm seeing the rehumanization that has been lost in mental health. And storytelling is the invitation to rehumanize.
To reconnect.
It's an invitation for me to see you, to hear you. What is your experience?
Yeah.
Let me live it with you.
Okay. Hold
Joe,
that. That's
Joe,
powerful.
hold
Hold
that
that. We'll be right back with more conversation with Joe Kou.
All right, that music means that it's poll time, and Marla is not in the dancing mood.
I don't want to dance
today.
in 2023.
But look at you. You're just crumping instead. That's a form of dance. I don't think you understand that.
I don't want to do this. Why is this happening?
Shaking erratically is what dancing seems to be these days.
Turn that music
Marla, last week we asked what percentage, well, not last week, it was, I think on the 19th was our last show before the Christmas break.
Last year.
Our question was, what percentage of all global diseases are either mental, neurological, or substance abuse disorders? What percentage of all global diseases are either mental, neurological, or substance abuse disorders? Your options were A, 3%, B, 7%, or C, 10%. Joe, we need your guess.
What is it?
Those figures don't seem right to me, but I'm going to go with 10%.
Well, Joe, ding, ding, ding. I can sense that you felt it was a little bit low, so you went with the highest number. You're absolutely
quickly living
correct.
up to the stereotype, Joe. I don't know what's happening here.
That's 10% of all global diseases will fall under the mental health issue.
I do well on tests.
Please,
Sorry.
please fail.
All right, Marla, what's our question for next week?
All right, Joe, now this is another one. You ready?
Let's do it.
Go ahead.
All right. It's estimated that 70% of Americans will experience a traumatic event in their lifetime. What percentage
Of that 70.
will go on to develop PTSD? 6%, 14%, or 20%?
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
So 70% of all Americans will have a traumatic event in their lifetime.
Of that 70, what percentage will go on to develop post-traumatic stress syndrome? 6%?
Disorder.
Disorder. Syndrome. PTSD. Anyway, 6%, 14%, or 20%?
It's an interesting framing of the question I want to point out, because it's not asking how many of those will go on to seek treatment.
Right.
It's asking how many will develop a form of
PTSD.
PTSD.
Yes.
So I'm going to go with the highest number again.
Well, Joe, we can't tell you the answer
we're glad you
this
went
time.
there, but you'll have to tune in next week to find out if you are really just, come on,
If Joe is batting 1,000, we will find out. We want to remind you again, dollar today keeps the stigma away. So text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021. And don't forget, if you're feeling like you're in some type of mental health crisis, 988 is the new hotline. Make sure you take advantage. There's no need to suffer alone.
And I want to just quickly say, please help us make a difference this year and erase the stigma.
We'll be back.
Okay, well, Joe has something to look forward to, even though we've already seen into your future.
Joe,
that we're,
Joe, you were actually really just framing it up nicely for us in ways that you were using your storytelling as you were, I guess, in a very unique way, sort of branding your own coaching business. But it seemed like it led you to some very profound understandings when it comes to human connectivity and interpersonal relationships and how the stress that we feel for the lack thereof sometimes in today's fast-paced society. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, there is a huge dehumanizing effect that happens in the kind of lives that we're living today. And a lot of that actually starts at home. We're seeing a lot of parents no longer connecting with their spouses, their children.
Yeah.
We're seeing children that are getting used to and normalizing this concept that there is no human connection. I'm not part of you. I'm looking at my phone. My relationships are parasocial. I follow all these people.
You don't know any of them.
And that same phone that you're looking at is now programmed to study you, to just keep feeding you as a purchaser of products as your only actual value.
And this, to me, and this is now becoming my area of focus, is this detachment. It isn't just a relational wound that affects your relationships. What we're seeing is this detachment often leads to breakdowns mentally, emotionally, physically. It's this sense that you are no longer human because you're no longer humanizing. You're no longer co-relating. There is a sense of being, a sense of presence when you're present with somebody. And that's not something that comes naturally anymore.
Right.
So Joe, right quick, as we wrap up, how do we get back to that human? I would say one lesson that I can take away from what you're saying is I'm not just a consumer, I'm a human being.
Yes.
So how do we get back to that understanding?
There's a lot of work to do, and we can't unpack that in 20 minutes, but my takeaway message would be the biggest thing we can do for mental health is to restore people's humanity. And we start doing that by listening to their stories, not with our heads to try to diagnose, but with our hearts first.
Feel it first.
And then when you know what it's like to be that person and have that struggle, then let's talk about what to do together. That's the biggest piece that I wish people can take away, and anybody that wants to follow my work can do so.
And where do we find that? And how do we find you?
Right now, I'm on a little bit of hiatus. I'm a full-time student again at the age of 40.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So I am a little bit harder to find on purpose, but if you go to joekou.card.co, that's joekou.card.co, you'll find everything that I'm up to and the best ways to reach me.
Okay, well, since I would like to have gotten my degree, but I chose raising a bunch of people, when you're done, I'd like for you to just give me your degree. You do the study.
Joe, you don't have to listen
and then
to
you
her.
Just let me have what? You're not what we do here on Mental Health
Joe,
Storyteller?
your testimony, your story
I was connecting
is
to him on a human, not a heart
very
level.
transparent, and you have given us a lot of
Awesome.
nuggets to hold on to.
Seriously.
And first of all, the best of everything to you as you re-engage your educational career.
Thank you.
The best of luck with that.
And thank you for joining us, seriously,
Absolutely.
because what you've said is something that we can all really honestly take to heart. And I'm glad that you were able to make it and say it so succinctly, because feeling is, to me, the first thing that and we've lost our way. And because you know this is not a tangible connection.
Right. It's better than nothing, but we do want to get back to that real connection as much as possible.
Absolutely. Our guest has been Joe Kou. Next week is Ryan Steigar, so you don't want to miss that. Until next time, we're Marla and Dave. Remember,
listen, don't miss any Mental Health Monday. Mondays have become all about mental health and us, all of us.
Catch
Join
up on
us.
past episodes.
You're
Mental
not
Health
alone
Mondays,
here.
our YouTube channel. Your overall health includes your mental health. So remember that. Have a great new year, as this is our first episode this year. There'll be many more. See you next time.
Bye.